Welcome to the Bandwich Tapes. I'm Brad Williams. My guest today is Eliot Lewis, a multi-instrumentalist, singer, songwriter, and producer whose career has placed him alongside some of the most recognizable artists in popular music. Eliot was a member of Average White Band before spending years touring with Hall & Oates. He was a central part of Live from Daryl's House, where he helped shape spontaneous performances with an extraordinary range of guests, including Robert Fripp, CeeLo Green, Booker T. Jones, and Grace Potter. Early in his career, he'd worked closely with songwriter and producer Dan Hartman and played on Tina Turner's recording of The Best. In this conversation, Eliot and I talk about beginning as drummers, learning to serve the song on multiple instruments, the communication that happens inside a great rhythm section, and the fast-moving process behind Live from Daryl's House. We also explore Eliot's current solo shows, where he uses live looping to build the energy and dynamics of a full band in real time. Here's my conversation with Eliot Lewis. Eliot, it is such a pleasure to welcome you to the podcast. How are things going for you today?
Things are going great. Good to be seeing and talking to you here.
Yeah, we've been chatting back and forth to get this scheduled, and I'm glad that we're finally here talking and just catching up a little bit. And yeah, man, I'm just such a pleasure of what you do and how you do it. So it's an honor to get to hang out and chat with you for a while.
Thanks, man. Likewise.
Yeah. As we're recording this, looking at your calendar, it looks like you're about to embark on some shows pretty soon. How's that? What's the plan for that?
Yeah, I'm heading down to Virginia this week and then back up to Delaware. So this is actually my first solo show in Virginia. I've been to Virginia many times, of course, but first solo show there this Friday in Bowling Green. And then and I've been playing Delaware now for about 4 or 5 years, and it's the state that I never expected for what I do to really kind of catch on. But I've had some great shows there, so I've been going to Delaware once or twice a year now and doing these like small listening rooms and fortunately selling them out, and it's been great. So obviously some music appreciation in Delaware.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. I was just watching a CBS Sunday Morning, just did a thing yesterday about how people are really, there's so much kind of shifting to people just wanting to get in a room with each other and listen, like this whole listening room kind of thing that's happening. And it's so encouraging to hear you say that you have shows of people that just want to come and listen to what you have to do. It's not let's just go out and be crazy or anything. Let's listen to what this artist has to say. And I just, that's really amazing.
It's a great atmosphere for what I do in particular, because I play all of my shows pretty much now solo. So, I'm a multi-instrumentalist, and I've been doing this live looping show now for about 5 years or so. And so because I've had this very fortunate career of working with so many people, I tend to share stories about some of the experiences and some of the songs I played with these people. So the listening room vibe is perfect. They're sort of a captive audience. You're not background, and there's not a lot of commotion going on. So it's a great, the 100 to 150, 200 seat venue is kind of perfect for what I've been doing.
Yeah, that's great. I was so struck by how you execute your live looping show. It's just, and I'll, at some point in the next few minutes, I want to talk to you about how we both started on drums, which is interesting. And I've moved on to play other things, but I'm just so struck with how deep your pocket is when you play like with other people, and then just how deep it is when you play with, you started playing like on, setting up the drum part. And I'm like, oh yeah, he's like a deep, good drummer too. And all that's based on it. But it's just, I just love how you build the foundation of these tunes. And it's really amazing to see how you pull it off live.
Well, thank you very much. It means a lot when a fellow musician sort of notices all that inside stuff, because, I spent countless hours trying to get this right and come up with the right approach and sounds and mixes and balances and stuff. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
What happened for me was, like I said, I've played a lot of instruments over the course of my career. And it's probably about 10 years ago, there were people that were saying, you really should check out live looping. I had worked with KT Tunstall, and she really kind of helped, along with Ed Sheeran, put the live looping thing at a much higher recognition level. And so I dabbled in it probably about, 6 or so years ago. And I got whatever was the Boss, the big RC600 or something like that. And I got fairly confident at it. Now, so my goal in looping was always to try to create a band, to try to create the illusion of a 3 or 4 piece band. Obviously there are tons of guys that do an acoustic thing and they can do some rhythm on their guitar and play over it a little bit. My ambition was much deeper than that. So it was a little crazy and scary.
Yeah.
So honestly, I got comfortable enough with it, and I did I did a handful of shows, and I just was like, I'm not sure I can make this work to the level I want it to. So I sort of I took a step back from it and went back to some other scenarios, working with a drummer, a small band. And then I revisited. I really wanted it to work. And I think I found somebody on YouTube that was doing sort of a similar thing, but had a different sort of way to approach it. And I thought, if I take that idea and I take this idea, and maybe I can do this. And so I started working at it again. And then I came up with what I'm essentially doing now.
Yeah.
And then, trying to be conscious, and the challenge of looping is, to get into the song quick enough where you're not spending 2 minutes just setting the foundation up.
Right. So
that took a while, and then really figuring out which songs translated to the looping environment, So it takes some time, but I love it because it's so spontaneous. And, I have an idea, I'll have a song list, but it always changes, and from song to song. Within the song, I can lengthen, I can shorten something, I can add, I can take away. So it's the closest thing I have found to working with other musicians, but just doing it myself.
Yeah. And I'm sure it makes every show its own unique experience, right? In that how you're adjusting it for the audience, or how you're feeling on any given day. I imagine it's its own unique thing.
Very much so. Sometimes I come away or after a song and I'm like, wow, what just happened?
Yeah.
because you try, you really have to, with looping, you have to really be in the moment. You can't think too far ahead because, you're recording a part, you're taking away a part, you're layering. So you really have to be in the moment. So, you just try to feed off of what you're getting back from the audience and try to shift your energy along to that path. So I find it very stimulating, and it's always a surprise. Sometimes I do something in a song where I had no idea I was going to do that. And sometimes you try things, they don't work. And you try to make a mental note. It's like, okay, don't do that again. But I love it. It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah. Have you learned some things about your playing, maybe tendencies of like, I imagine, we all want to, maybe we want to push a little bit as we're going into the chorus and things like that. Did you notice some things about maybe how you feel things when you started playing with what you were doing live?
Yeah, there's an ebb and flow when you're playing with a drummer. People get excited and adrenaline kicks in, and you tend to get a little brighter with tempo or whatever it may be. And that's great because that makes for a very dynamic show and performance. With this, once you establish the tempo of the song, you're fairly locked in. Although, I'll stop things at times and all of a sudden just take the tempo down with just my guitar, sometimes with a keyboard, and then come back to where it was previously. So the challenge with looping is to create the kind of dynamics you would get with a band. And to keep your adrenaline in check, because you have to be focused. It's a very brain intensive way to approach music.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other piece of that too is you're putting a lot of trust in technology too, right? I mean, there's a lot of that.
Yes, and that's a great point you just brought up. That's a scary part about it. And I always say, if it all fails, just play and sing. I can do that. Nothing will stop that. And God, we were, speaking of Katie Tunstall, she would open up for Hall & Oates, on a couple of tours. We worked with her on Live from Daryl's House, but we were at Madison Square Garden, and I think it was the second time for me playing there. And she was opening, and she was so excited. And I've become good friends with her. And I went out in the audience to see her set before we played, and everything went wrong. About 4 songs, Brad, into the show. She's at Madison Square Garden. This is huge for her, for all of us, of course. And all her stuff stops working. And I don't know if she didn't have a tech of her own with her. And so the Hall & Oates crew was trying to help her and figure out her system and stuff. And she just had to wing it. It just proved to me that, somebody like her is just an incredible communicator, and she can dive into some stories or some way to go, okay, hey, this is what happened. We're going to go in a different direction now. Yeah, and people are okay with it because they see it's real. They see it's happening. And they want to be on her side. So she recovered from it beautifully. And I remember texting her after the show, and she's like, I went to my hotel room and I cried. And I was like, but you pulled it off amazingly. So so that is the challenge. We're relying on technology a lot. And we have to be mindful. And, I try to have a couple of backups for certain things. But, of course, I'm essentially a one-man band and crew and everything. So it's a little hard to have all of that covered without a crew and such.
Yeah. Well, and the thing too, that with what you do, and speaking of her, which is, both amazing, is that, look, you and I both know that there are some people that do the live looping thing, whether it be on a small level or that it is, I don't want to call it gimmicky, but maybe it hides some deficiencies in people's playing. Yeah. At the root of what you guys do, it's just augmenting and just adding additional cool stuff on top of the talent that is already there. And like you said, if something goes sideways with the tech, you're going to be okay, because ultimately you can play, right? That's the deal.
Yeah, I would just play and sing and strip it down. And sometimes that's the best approach, you know? So a lot of my songs that I do loop are versions of my own songs or songs that I've played with other people that are essentially stripped down to the core. Yeah. Sometimes it works out where I can layer and build this whole thing up, you know? For instance, I don't know what made me attempt to try this, but I included one of my, favorite Who songs in my show. And it's not a song I think anybody would ever consider in a million years to loop like a band, but Bob O'Reilly from Who's Next. Yeah, I mean, if you can imagine. And I was just like, what the hell? I'm going to try to see if I can make this sound like something. And it has sort of become a favorite of some of the fans that have seen me. So,
that is so
it's
cool.
It's just fun having, to me, music has always been about exploring. I feel like an explorer. And so why not try something that's sort of out of the norm, and see if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah. And nothing better than having a good audience that's willing to go with you and just love to watch you take a risk and just go for it. I love that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we were just talking earlier about you starting out on drums. I did the same thing, and I'd love to hear your perspective on it. I am so grateful that I started out playing drums, because it gave me such a foundation that everything else that I've been able to do after that has been built upon. Do you feel the same way?
100%. I still feel more connected to the drums. I spend a lot of time on the looping show on the drum, getting the foundation right, getting the sounds, getting the feel. And so, I still consider myself a drummer first and foremost. It makes you approach everything very rhythmically. It's just been the foundation, because early on, before Hall & Oates, I was a member of the Average White Band. So very, very funk and soul, And so the rhythmic aspect, because I was playing some bass in that, really helped. It really helped everything I've done in my career musically. Yeah.
I got to a place where because I play a bunch of different instruments, but typically I'm a singing bass player. That's what I do the most. And I found that I enjoy playing with a good drummer as much or maybe more than actually playing drums myself, because I enjoy getting that communication, that unsaid thing that happens between a drummer and a bass player.
Absolutely. Back when I grew up, I was very, very, very lucky and fortunate to have everything unfold the way it did for me, because I started playing drums when I was 10. And I met what has been a lifelong friend when I was 10 years old. He had just started playing bass, and his first bass was given to him by Jack Bruce.
Oh, okay.
So his father was very, very much in the music business. And at that point, he was working with bands like Mountain, which became West Bruce and Lang. He was involved in signing Santana. He became Peter Frampton's promotion man. So back when we were kids, we did what we did back then. We just played and played and played, and there was no YouTube, there was no computers. We just learned the communication between the two of us, and we would follow each other, and I think that maybe for some musicians that may have gotten lost, here's the part, here's the arrangement, but the communication between the two musicians. And I really grew up in that because of that era. That was what it was all about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And I talk about that on here a good bit with musicians, that I'm so grateful that I learned how to play at the time at which I did.
Yeah.
And I get the fact that you and I could get on our phone right now and find every recording of anything that we want. And I suppose that's cool. But at the same time, I think there's such a benefit from having to actively seek out recordings and, rewind things back like we used to do back in the day. I just feel like that active exercise of learning to play is so crucial. And I'm so glad that I got to experience it the way that I did.
100%. We were more invested in what we were listening to, who we were following, listening to, the records we bought, the artists we listened to. We were really invested. We had to do a little work.
Yeah.
I would walk to the store 2 miles and buy whatever record I was, dreaming about for 2 weeks to save up $5 to buy,
Yeah.
So, I know there's, we're in such a different world, technology, with technology. There was a simplicity to that time that I kind of miss, for sure.
I read that your mother was a classical pianist. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So how did she feel about her son playing all of this music that maybe wasn't, Chopin and Rachmaninoff and all of that? Did you go down the classical path at all, or did you stay kind of groove-based rock music?
Yeah, I always look back and I wish I had taken advantage more of my mom's training. She taught piano, she taught theory and harmony, so she was very well versed and she was a great player. And I wish I had taken advantage of that more, but when I was a kid, all I wanted to do was bang on stuff, pots and pans, books, and then finally bugged my parents for 2 years to get me a drum kit. But she did teach me a little bit. She definitely got me started. And I will say that just being around so much classical music, there's no doubt about what it did to my ears, what it did to my understanding of relative pitch and harmony and theory, and open up it's sort of, a broader musical world. But then, I gravitated to all the stuff that I loved as a kid and discovered David Bowie and Alice Cooper. But then I was listening to, Stevie Wonder and Sly. And so there was always this mix of rock and soul. And I gravitated to all the very theatrical bands of the day, Alice Cooper and, that stuff.
Yeah. And I would imagine, too, having that ear training and theory understanding, there is so much of your career that's probably been, you've had to really rely on that in terms of being able to work quickly because, whether you're in the studio or maybe you're doing filmings of the show with Daryl, I imagine there's time is money. And a lot of that stuff is crucial that you can be able to work in a quick way.
Well, yeah. And I never expected at that point when I was a kid just starting, I never expected that I was going to make a large bit of my career as a keyboard player. In an environment like Daryl's, we were constantly learning other artists' music. So if I had, because I'm completely self-taught, I'm not a schooled musician. So it made me have to probably work a little harder. But it also helped my ear. And so it developed my ear. So there's there's good and bad to the ways we develop. But it probably would have helped if I had been somewhat schooled, knowing that I was going to be in that environment so much.
Yeah. Yeah. I was so blown away with that, reading that you essentially started playing keyboards on that and being starting out as a drummer, being as a guitar player too, right? And bass player. I mean, you've done these really amazing gigs along your path, all in like different instruments along the way. I'm like, man, you're making it a lot harder for the rest of us to have so much talent there in one guy. It's pretty amazing.
Well, thank you for saying that. But yeah, honestly, when I look back at my career and what I can do, I don't even ever consider myself any kind of virtuoso at anything. I'm sort of, I can sort of get by. I think, when I started playing guitar, I transitioned from drums to guitar at about age 16. And then, of course, at around when I was 16, Van Halen came on the scene. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? This is just otherworldly. And so I think at that point went, okay, I love all this other stuff. I love bands like Cheap Trick and The Police that were much more minimal. It was all more about songwriting and creating textures and atmosphere with your instrument. And I just thought, I'm never going to be a virtuoso like Van Halen. So I just decided consciously, I'm not going to go down that path of trying to excel at being technically proficient. I just want to be able to put music together, convey music, and have an understanding of different instruments so I can write. I can be a sort of a self-contained, complete songwriter. So that, if anything, that was my strength, and I never, pursued the technical abilities.
I'm right there with you, and I think your ability to be a musical chameleon, I mean, to be able to step into so many different types of things and on multiple instruments, that's the proof is there, that having such an incredible knowledge on such a wide variety of instruments and styles of music. I mean, that's a testament to this career that you're continuing to have,
Well, thank you. And you just used a word that always stuck with me, chameleon, because I did one of the sort of more higher level professional things I did when I was still in my mid-20s, pretty young, without a track record really yet, is I worked with Dan Hartman. And because I lived in proximity to him, and my brother knew him. My brother was sort of, he was in the booking agency world, so he ultimately put me in touch with the average white band, Alan Gorey. But he also gave my demo tape or something like that to Dan Hartman. And Dan, I guess, saw something in it, and he hired me and put me on a bunch of records when I hadn't done anything like that. And he was like a mentor to me, and I was able to spend time with him in the studio. We became good friends and kind of look over his shoulder to see what he does as a songwriter and as a producer and musician. And he was a real chameleon. And I always thought, wow, this is really cool. He would play me a demo tape he did for Chaka Khan and literally sing like her. I was like, wow, this is insane. And then he did the demo for James Brown's song, Coming to America. And he sounded like James Brown. I was like, this is insane. I mean, the guy was capable of, sounding and getting inside the musical identity of so many different artists. And he had me play on Tina Turner's big hit, Simply the Best. Wow. So one of the things I did early on. So the idea of this chameleon thing really kind of stuck with me. And I was really fascinated when I was a kid, as much as I was into all these rock artists, I was really fascinated with the concept. My brothers were playing all this great stuff and exposing me to it. And Todd Rundgren was on the list,
Oh, man.
And so, and then Stevie Wonder, and I literally remember my brother saying, in reference to Stevie or Todd, like they played all the stuff on the records. They played all the instruments. And at 10 years old, I'm thinking, how is that possible? And they would try to, explain the idea of multi-tracking, and you do one track at a time and you go back and you play over it or whatever. And so that really fascinated me, and I think it stuck with me. So later on, it became apparent that it would be beneficial to learn a few instruments and sort of at least have a good understanding, you know. And it certainly worked out. I was able to, work in different environments on a different instrument. So it really opened up my world. And I always say anybody who's starting out, try to, get some insight on other instruments, because it really does open things up.
Yeah, and it's there's so much to it in that, obviously the technical facility required to playing the instrument, but I imagine, the shifting your brain from being a bass player to being a keyboard player or a guitar player is to know, I mean, there's so much involved in that, of knowing how you have to mentally shift and like playing with the drummer or not stepping on each other harmonically or in the same range with, when you're playing keyboards, not getting in the way of the bass player, not getting in the way of the guitar player. And there's a lot of pieces involved in that when you're moving from one role to the other.
There are. And I was so fortunate, lucky enough to work with T-Bone Walk in Hall & Oates. And he was just on another level. He could get on keys and play incredible. He could get on bass, obviously, and just be a master. He could get on guitar and be a master. So that really inspired me and was further sort of gave me insight to being able to shift on instruments because of his expertise.
Looking back on that gig with Average White Band, which is just amazing. I guess when you look back on that time in your life, what do you think you took away musically from that experience playing in that band?
Well, first and foremost, don't drink too much scotch. That's a whole nother world. No, honestly, it was so. When I joined the Average White Band, it was, so I, like a lot of young kids, right? You find what you like. And I played drums, I played guitar, I had some bands, and I had, this dream that we all do of having a band, traveling the world, being successful. And that didn't happen. So I decided, probably when I was about, early 20s, that I really want to have a career. I want to make this my life. And so I reshifted to just being a songwriter and a producer and an engineer. I wanted to be that guy. So I just basically I would have a day gig in a music store. And every night after work, I would literally walk directly into my room and just lock my door for 3 hours and try to come up with something. And I did that for a couple of years. And eventually I had something I felt confident enough to try to, approach some record labels and publishers. I got a deal with Sony as a writer, and that lasted for 3 or 4 or 5, maybe 5 years. And then after that, I got a deal with Warner Brothers. So that's the track I was on. And my brother put me together with Alan Gorey of the Average White Band. And now this is mid to late 80s. And so they had disbanded. They weren't together as a band anymore. So Alan had a solo career. He was writing. And it was a similar scenario where we got together as songwriting partners, and we really hit it off. I learned so much from him. We wrote a ton of songs together. And then a couple of years after doing that, they decided they were going to put the band back together. And so I had co-written a bunch of songs with him for this comeback record. And they went off to Seattle to record it. And I thought, great, I did this vacation with my brother and sister-in-law, and I took a train across country. And while I'm out there, I checked my phone messages, and Alan Gorey was in Seattle. They were recording this record, and he said, "El, we really want you to be involved in this, the making of the record. You co-wrote these songs, but we want you to maybe play some more things on it and maybe co-produce." And so I went out, and it was incredible experiences to be involved in. Alex Lidgerwood, who sang with Santana, was involved in it's incredible talent. So I had no illusions about ever being in this band, So what happened was there was a point where we were out in Seattle for a couple of months working on this record. And they decided, hey, let's just do a show at this little corner club to try out material, just to make it feel like it's live. It was like, great. So we did that. And if something happened right at that moment, and then within 6 months, they were like, well, we're putting the band back together and you're in it. There was no audition, or there was no can you come and try out? It was just like, we're going out on the road. So,
wow.
It was really interesting. So then I was like, well, wow, this is all these things that I wanted to do when I was, 15, 16, 17 years old. Now are happening. Now I'm in a band and I'm going on the road, I'm touring, and, it was a wild experience. But that was some of the most fun years in my life because they were so happy. And the vibe in the band, it was so much laughing and so much good camaraderie. And, it was all new to me. I hadn't toured on that level. We would do a club one night, and then we would go play a festival for 60,000 people. So there was a bit of everything. And then by the mid-90s, they got signed to William Morris Agency. So then the level of everything kind of took a big step up. And but it was a blast. I mean, we would play with Earth, Wind, and Fire all the time. We would play with the Ohio Players, War, B.B. King, Buddy Guy. We would do festivals with. So it was an incredible experience. I never thought that would happen. And the thing that I really never expected in a million years was to be a singer in that band. So I think just, I had always sang, even as a drummer, but it was just parts, background parts. I never really was into the world of being a lead singer. I could sing, but never considered myself a lead singer. And so I think because I had a high falsetto and I had the range at that point that I was sort of put on me to do Hamish's parts. And so it just naturally evolved. And of course, I'm around these incredible singers that inspired me to be a better singer. And that's how that happened.
Yeah. And I imagine that at the end of your time with that band, you probably left a better and more confident singer, certainly, than when you arrived, right?
100%. I mean, Alan really was hugely inspiring. He just an incredible soul singer. And just being in that environment and, playing with Al Green, people, Earth, Wind, and Fire, just being around that level of talent was inspiring.
Amazing. How does being a side man in a band or with an artist, how does it change the way that you approach being a band leader and leading your own project? Does it Do you find that it makes you more empathetic with the artist that you're playing with? How does it, maybe that shift the way you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's just you try to learn from every scenario that you're with. So, I did all these things on my own and then joined the Average White Band, and now I'm a team player. I'm part of a team. Right. Although it was very cool because I was writing some of the music at that period in the band, in their history. And I had some influence as to coming up with record cover ideas and bringing people in. So I was really a part of the band. I wasn't a backup player at all. I was a full member of the band. And then shifting to Hall & Oates, I was really just a band member. I was a backup musician. Although they never really made us feel like that. Of course, it's Daryl and John. They've created this incredible career and, incredible amount of hit songs. So I knew my role in that. I was very comfortable with that because all of a sudden now we're touring at a very high level. So I think, going back and just doing my own thing now, you just learn bits and pieces that help you navigate the road ahead solo. And it's a lot of work. It's, I love to play, but, operating your own career is quite the task.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, I've played in bands for many years and then led bands for many years. And just for me, I would much rather play in someone else's band because advancing the dates with the venue, doing this and that, there are a lot of other responsibilities that you take that you're doing when you're not just having to show up with your rig or whatever and doing the gig, right?
I had no idea at the level that was going to take me down, And the reality of it is that, doing what I'm doing completely solo I'm wearing 10 hats literally every day because I'm the booking agent. I am advancing the shows. I'm traveling. I'm booking the hotels, the arrangements for the songs. I'm doing all the marketing, social media. It's an enormous challenge, but I love to play. And I figured, and I've always sort of been like that. I've always kind of said, well, unless you do it, it's probably not going to get done attitude. So, but there are days that are a little frustrating. I have to do 10 other things before I can even get to picking up a guitar or keyboard and playing music. And so that part of it's the most frustrating. It's just time management with trying to do so much. But again, at the end of the day, I love to play. And once I can fulfill a small tour or even a big tour, it feels very satisfying that I was able to create all of this,
Yeah. No, absolutely. I had also read that one of the things I thought was interesting is, and I think I remember reading, Pat Metheny would do this back in the day, how you like to kind of you like to work out songs and play songs live before you go into the studio and record them. And I know a lot of artists will typically write, rehearse, record a project, and then go out and play it in front of audiences. And I like this idea of kind of letting things evolve in front of an audience before you go in and record. What was your thinking on starting to do that?
I think I didn't originally do that. The first few solo records I did, I think I felt like I would just write and record in the moment because I had the idea, it felt right. But then, probably after 2 or 3 solo records, I would take those songs and obviously go out and play them live, and I'd be like, oh, wow, that song really developed. It really evolved since I recorded it. And so I thought, when it's possible, it's a good idea to put it into the show and just get comfortable with it live and see where it goes, where your tendencies in the song want to go. And then usually those tendencies are the right tendencies because you're in the moment, you're in front of people. So I try to do that whenever possible. Not every time, but I try to keep that part of my process.
I love that idea of doing that.
Yeah.
I was curious about we were talking about doing the show, the Live from Daryl's House. You mentioned that earlier. Mm-hmm. Just about I've been so curious about like the logistics of a project like that, of how quickly that would probably happen with rehearsals and bringing an artist in like that. What was a typical day like doing a project like that?
It was jam-packed.
That's what I figured.
Yeah. So typically the way it worked was Daryl and his manager and whoever the musical director was, what T-Bone in the early days would be the liaison between Daryl and the artist, would get a song list together. They'd figure out, typical scenario would be like 4 of the artist, the guest songs, and then 2 or maybe 3 of Daryl's songs or Hall & Oates catalog. And so we would get a song list. It could be a week or 2 weeks before the shoot. Sometimes it could be just 5 days before the shoot, because it would change. A lot of artists wanted to do a lot of Daryl, like Sarah Smile or a Rich Girl, and we had already done those. So it's like, no, look further, look deeper,
Right.
So I think just after working on so much music for so long, the process gets easier. And it is really interesting because after a few years of doing it, I could easily see that it was like, wow, learning some of the Hall & Oates material in the early days for me was challenging. There's a lot of music there. There's a lot of sophisticated grown-up chords
Yep.
that I hadn't played necessarily. So it became easier. Like the more you do things, the easier it became. But typically we would get the set list and then just come together on the day of the shoot. We would arrive at either the house or the venue, the club, or the location wherever we were doing it. And kind of everybody get their sounds with the engineers, everybody get their instruments, everybody get their monitors, like a normal gig, but we're not playing for an audience. And we would sometimes run over 1 or 2 songs on our own before Daryl came in. And Daryl would come in maybe at noon. We would run through maybe 1 or 2 things. He would get his sound, and that was it. And then the artist would come maybe an hour later, and then they would get comfortable with their gear and their rig, and we just start shooting. And Daryl's whole, I think, premise for the show was he didn't want it to be perfect. He wanted it to really, truly be genuine and be spontaneous. He wanted it to be like there's these musicians coming together and they're finding their way through this music for the first time. And I think it's a testament to how good all the players in the band were. We had played together for a long time, so we had a good rapport and relationship, and we could kind of make our way through this stuff. And so there was, it got pretty easy actually, you know. And one of the last shows I did was with Robert Fripp. And,
Wow.
and, you know, we did a King Crimson song called Red. And that was definitely probably at the top of the challenging list for me. And Daryl was like, he said, "El, you're going to do all that stuff, right? Because I'm not going to go near that." It's like, yeah,
thanks,
do all this. Yeah, thanks, boss. And it's just because I don't know if you know that song. It's just there's no there's almost no form to it. There's things that happen only once in the song, and there's not a typical structured, you know, song. So it was challenging, and it was really cool because this is this is one of the last things I did is when we went through the song the first time with Robert Fripp. We went through it once. Okay, it was like, all right, let's do Red. Let's see how this goes. And after the song, he said, I have to tell you, when King Crimson got back together, we'd have to rehearse that song for a week to make it sound like what you guys just did.
Oh,
so it was like,
awesome.
It was like, whew. So again, it's a testament to how much we played and how many of these shows we did, and the process gets easier. But yeah, it's a blast, man. I never in a million years thought I would work with so many amazing people on that show.
Yeah. And you just said the word process. That's exactly what I was going to bring up, is that I do, if there's anything, I mean, I love so much about that show, but I love that it gives both musicians and non-musicians an amazing glimpse of what that process looks like when people get together that may not play music together on a regular basis, and how much active and passive work is required of each person to make it the best thing that it can be in a short amount of time, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was a learning experience for us. Every artist that we played with, I think I learned something new from looking at their process. And you never know how it's going to go. There would be people that came in, for instance, CeeLo Green did an episode. And, you know, at that point, was it The Voice that he was on or whatever it was? Yeah, you know, he was people saw him on TV every week. He's a larger than life personality, right? Yet he came in to do the show and he got very quiet and very almost shy. And it was like, wow, this is not what I expected. And it happened with another artist too. It happened with Booker T. And so you never know how an artist's personality, and then the CeeLo kind of, I think maybe because it was just a different environment and he's singing with Daryl and it's a really different kind of thing than what he was doing on TV. And, but of course he killed it. He just, we try to make him comfortable and he just was, incredible.
Yeah. That was one of my favorite episodes, was the one with CeeLo. It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, just so you could just, when an artist brings their energy, there's no way to not feel that. Grace Potter was another one. She just had this incredible energy and just let's do this,
Yeah. Yeah, that it's so fascinating and just so much fun to watch those. And yeah, it's to see how much those artists bring their personality or leave some of it behind, that it's not overtaking this, but it's also contributing. It's a really cool exercise of seeing how that collaboration works with people.
And, and Daryl really, he had a vision for it, and it really, it became a very unique thing. And, it started off so small. I mean, the first episode, I think they have it on his YouTube channel. It was a different band at the time. I was lucky because I think the only musician who was in pretty much all of the episodes until the very, very end because I'd left the organization. But the first episode was literally just our road crew with cameras, like
Wow.
no professional, camera experience at all, just kind of like filming this thing and just getting a vibe for it, and, but very shortly it was like, everybody wanted to be on the show because it was sterile and became a thing. So it was great to be a part of.
Yeah, that's amazing. Do you have moments in your day, in your life, where you just stop and think, man, I have gotten to do some really, really cool things in my career?
Almost not a day goes by where, I don't, greatly appreciate the journey I've been on and how it turned out. My original goal as a 10-year-old or 11-year-old was to play music, maybe travel a little bit, and that was it. Back then we don't think about money or career or anything. And to look back and look at the journey and see, I've toured all over the world. I've played all the venues that I went to as a little kid to see artists and just could never fathom in a million years of playing Madison Square Garden when I went there at 11 years old, and to play all these places so many times, and it's incredible. I'm very, very, very grateful, beyond words.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly convinced that your ability level, your talent, certainly is largely to part of the reason, but also I can sense that you're such a team player. Your personality, I would imagine you just work to bring out the best in everyone else that you're around, and that leads to a career like the one you've had.
Well, thank you for saying that. I do believe that it's important when you're in a band to be a team player, and I think that's the problem that happens with a lot of bands is not everybody is an equal team player. They want something more, maybe for themselves or whatever the situation may be. And maybe that's part of the reason why I just stay more solo now. Although my experiences in bands have been great, but I know that exists and I know that's broken up a ton of bands.
Yeah.
And so I just find it more simple to navigate things on my own. But working with Daryl and John was just, an incredible experience. I mean, just when I entered their world, just to go, okay, these guys really know their stuff. I mean, especially when it comes to harmonies and crafting songs, it's no wonder that they had all the hits they did. And it was honestly very challenging for me because, in the 80s, when the technology exploded, when sampling and sequencing, all that exploded, and I was working with Dan at that point, I had sort of gone headfirst into all that because I was like, oh, I can put together all this stuff on my own with technology and become the self-contained songwriter and player. But later on, I'm not even sure where I was going with that. So I lost my train of thought.
No, it's good. Yeah, there was so much changing around that time that I would imagine that just staying on top of it. I mean, I would imagine did you feel a lot of pressure to like stay on the cutting edge with gear and all of that? I mean,
yeah, I naturally, for whatever reason, maybe it was at that point in the 80s that I thought, oh, this technology now exists. Probably a good idea to use it, take advantage of it. And again, maybe there were some other influences like Todd Rundgren. Todd Rundgren was very, very into using the latest technology of the day, whatever was available to him. And, I think as long as you use it to serve what's important to you, that's how I try to go about it. But, there's something to be said for just picking up an acoustic guitar and writing something completely pure without any technology. It's often the best.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, whether it's on acoustic guitar or with whatever, a studio full of instruments, a good song is a good song. And no matter how you dress it up, the song has to be there and it has to be good first and foremost.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we go, so what does the rest of the year look like for you? I know you have some stuff coming up on some really cool solo shows. Are you going to continue doing that throughout the remainder of the year?
Oh, yeah. I have quite a few dates for the year. And every year keeps evolving and shifting a little bit, with areas that I'm able to reach. So, I have some stuff in this region after this weekend. Then I go out to the Midwest quite a bit. I've had a nice rapport with states like Ohio in particular, Indiana, Michigan. Sometimes I'll get into Chicago. So I have a nice, fairly lengthy tour in September in those regions. And then I will come back, do some more shows in this region, and then probably go down south and do some southern states, Florida again. And it's always evolving.
That is awesome.
Yeah. I'm always fascinated with, what's coming up next.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Eliot, I have had so much fun hanging out with you. This
has been great.
Thanks for your time and just thanks for all the great music that you've shared with us so far, and just best of luck to you.
Thank you so much, Brad. Great to meet you and talk with you.
Yeah.
And I wish you much success in everything as well.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please follow or subscribe to the Bandwich Tapes wherever you listen, and consider leaving a rating or review. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.